Am I? Can you hear me now?
Okay. You were working a second ago.
There's still an error populating on playback on the live stream link. So
Okay.
that's
Just for council, just as a reminder, don't forget we have on the lower mid-right section, there's reactions.
oh, we're live.
You can raise your hand in that window, if you would, please.
All right, we are live. Can you hear me now?
I
Yes.
can.
Okay, good. All right,
Perfect.
we're ready to go whenever you're ready.
Okay. Good evening. Today is Tuesday, February 2nd, and we'll be starting our closed session portion of our meeting at 5:03. Can I have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Santos?
Here.
Councilmember Fenn?
Here.
Councilmember Martinez?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem White?
Here.
Mayor Lara?
Here. Currently, Riverside County remains under the purple tier, which prohibits indoor gatherings. Therefore, this meeting will be conducted in a virtual format only. Participation is encouraged by emailing any public comments to the city clerk's office, or by calling in using the phone number provided on the front of the agenda. Do we have any public comments, either phoned in or emailed in at this time?
I have no written comments. Carrie, do we have anyone on the line?
No callers on the line.
Okay, so with that, Mr. Pinkney, if you could please read the items for discussion in closed session.
The council will be meeting in closed session. Item number 1 is conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation pursuant to paragraph 2, 3, or 4 of subdivision D of section 54956.9 of the California Government Code. And that involves one case, potential breach of settlement agreement, and the adverse party that we'll be discussing in closed session is Mozafar Azad, Hamid Rocknian, and Rosita Rocknian regarding tentative track map 32850. The second item is conference with labor negotiators pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6. The city designated representatives are the city manager, Todd Parton, and Administrative Services Director, Carrie Mendoza. The employee organizations are the Beaumont Police Officers Association and the SEIU. The third item for closed session is conference with legal counsel regarding anticipated existing litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D1 and or 2 and or 3 workers' comp case numbers COBM 0101 and COBM 0109.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pinkney. So with that, we will adjourn to our closed session at 5:06 p.m.
All right, so it looks like we're still waiting for Julio.
And Councilmember Santos.
Yes.
Four down, one to go.
You ready to go live?
All right.
Okay, we're good to go now.
Good to go? Okay. Good evening. We are coming back out of closed session into regular session. Mr. Pinckney, can you give us a report out, please?
Yes, Your Honor. The first item for closed session was conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D 2, 3, and/or 4. And it was involving one potential case related to Mozaffar, Basad, Hamid Rachmian, and Rosita Rachmian regarding tentative track map 32850. There was reportable action taken. There was a motion to approve an amendment to an existing settlement agreement with the parties that I just listed. And the first was made by Mayor Pro Tem White, and the second was made by Mayor Lara. And the vote was Mayor Pro Tem White, yes, in favor of approving the settlement. Mayor Lara, yes, in favor of approving the settlement. Councilmember Santos, in favor. Martinez, in favor. And Councilmember Fenn, also in favor. And the second item was conference with labor negotiators pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6. The city designated representatives or the city manager, Todd Parton, and Administrative Services Director, Carrie Mendoza, the employee organizations, the Beaumont Police Officers Association, and the SEIU, and there was no reportable action taken in closed session on that item. The third item was conference with legal counsel regarding anticipated existing litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D1, 2, and/or 3, workers' comp case number COBM 0101 and COBM 0109. There was no reportable action taken in closed session on that item. And that concludes the report out from closed session.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pinckney. So this will begin our regular session for Tuesday, February 2nd. I will call this meeting to order at 6:07. Nicole, may I have roll call, please?
Yes. Councilmember Santos?
Here.
Councilmember Fenn?
Here.
Councilmember Martinez?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem White? Here. Mayor Lara?
Here. All right. Report out, closed session items, no excuse absence. Mayor Pro Tem White, would you please lead the pledge? Right.
United States of America and
And to the republic for which it stands,
one nation,
one nation,
under God, indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty and justice.
for all.
Justice for all.
Thank you. All right. Nicole, do we have any announcements, recognition, proclamations, or correspondence at this time?
No, sir.
Okay. We'll be Coming to public comment period. Currently, Riverside County remains under the purple tier, which prohibits indoor gatherings. Therefore, this meeting will be conducted in a virtual format only. Participation is encouraged by emailing any public comments to the city clerk's office or by calling in using the phone number provided on the front of the agenda. Do we have any public comments at this time?
I have no written comments. Carrie, do we have anyone on the line?
No callers on the line, Nicole.
Okay. I don't know what happened to my light here, but I'm not mad, so you know. So that brings us to action items. No, I'm sorry, excuse me. That brings us to the consent calendar. Are there any items that council wishes to pull from consent calendar? I see no hands raised. We have a motion on consent calendar.
Mayor, I move to approve all the items on tonight's consent calendar.
I'll second.
Okay, and I'll do roll call. Councilmember Santos?
Yes.
Councilmember Fenn?
Yes.
Councilmember Martinez?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem White?
Yes.
Mayor Lara?
Yes. Okay. We have no public hearings this evening. Now brings us to action items. Item 5, fiscal year 2020 audited financial statements and internal control findings. We have a staff report by Mr. Jeff Mullenkamp.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, City Council. I appreciate the opportunity to bring this to you. I'm really excited because I told the city manager we'd try and get it to you as early as we could, and I feel like we did that. So I'm really proud of the team and actually the working relationship with our auditors, who really came in and did a good job for us. I'm just going to briefly take a few minutes, and then I am going to turn it over to the auditors. We have 3 members of the firm actually here. Veronica Hernandez, who is going to give a brief presentation for you. Charles DeSimone, who's the manager on the job, and Scott Manno, who's a partner with the firm, and they're all here to answer your questions and to provide any kind of insight you need into what they do and how they do it. So what you have before you is a lot of material. It's very dense material, but essentially what it boils down to is the audit report, which has the opinion from the auditors, the management discussion and analysis, which really is probably the easiest way to see a year-over-year comparison of where we were, where we are, from a standpoint of the balance sheet and the revenues and things of that nature. Then from there, the actual financial statements themselves, which again are fairly dense, there's a lot of material in there. And then the notes to the financial statements. These are all outlined in your staff report. I've always encouraged those that really want to kind of get the Reader's Digest to focus on the MD&A because it's, I think, easy to read, and it provides a little bit of narrative as to kind of what happened and what we tried to achieve during the year. A couple of highlights for you, from a fiscal standpoint, because, I talked about the general fund, the wastewater fund, we talked about the budget a lot during the year. But what we don't really talk about is the balance sheet and it's kind of how the city's done overall from a financial perspective. And this is an opportunity for you to kind of see that information and to digest it. And again, the MD&A gives it to you in a comparative format. But it's good news. The city has continued to improve its financial position. We went up, essentially, if you take all of the funds on the government-wide roll-up, it's about $19 million increase. There was 2 factors that contributed to that. There was an increase in assets and a decrease in liabilities. The general fund unassigned, which I know is of interest to you, and we're going to be coming back to you sometime next month to discuss that, is a little bit over $19 million in unassigned or unrestricted funds. And so that's, we'll be talking about the opportunities and options for the council coming up in this, again, the next month. A couple of things I'd like to point out to you that are in your staff report that I'm tooting our horn a little bit, and really I want to throw a little shout out to Jennifer Eustachian and Lisa Leach, who really were my leads, and they did, to be honest with you, I'm up here taking a little bit of credit, but they did all the work. along with the auditors. And a couple of things that are in your staff report that I think is important to note is where we've been and where we are. While we still have some internal control findings and some things that we need to deal with, we would have expected the auditors to come in and find some new things, and they actually did. And we have a couple holdovers from prior years that we still need to deal with. Those are outlined in your report. But I think it's also important to note where we were. And only 2 years ago, we had 5 material weaknesses, and now we have 0. And so that, I think, notes the improvement that the city has seen. And then basically the timing of getting it to you, we now are here early February. We had the report dated January 4th. And this is essentially over 2 months better than where we were 2 years ago. And so I want to throw credit out to my team, to the city staff who cooperated and helped out the auditors in getting this result to you. And then the last item on here, and this is for Lisa, a little shout out to her. We only had 5 journal entries that the auditors proposed this time. And as compared to 2 years ago, where that was 18, more than triple the number. And so I'm just doing a little bit of a tooting the horn on that piece of it. Again, we have a full team here. Lisa's on, the auditors are here, and I'm going to turn it over to Veronica. I'd be happy to come back and answer questions, but the auditors, if they can present to you before that, kind of what their process is all about. I think Veronica is going to share her screen now, and I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. Let me share my screen. Okay, so I just have a brief presentation here. So I'm the audit supervisor for this year. So let's start with the responsibilities of the auditor. Our responsibilities are to audit the city's financial statements in conformity with U.S. generally accepted auditing standards. These standards require that we plan and perform the audit to obtain reasonable assurance about whether the basic financial statements are free of material misstatements. We expressed an opinion as to whether those financial statements are fairly presented in conformity with generally accepted accounting principles. We assist management in drafting annual financial statements and prepare other required reports for State Controller's Office. The responsibilities of management is the preparation and fair presentation of the financial statements in accordance with GAAP. This includes the design, implementation, and maintenance over internal controls, and the preparation and the fair presentation of financial statements that are free from material misstatement, whether due to fraud or error. Our audit process begins by performing an interim audit. This includes an internal control review and a detailed risk assessment. We obtain an understanding of the entity, we test and review controls for various cycles, and then we perform a year-end audit. This includes a sample audit over the financial records and inspecting relevant documents, inquiring about policies, procedures, and transactions, confirming balances and transactions with outside parties, and performing analytical procedures. We also read council and successor agency meeting minutes. We prepare the GAN limit agreed upon procedures report and review and obtain relevant documents such as contracts and debt agreements. Upon completing our audit, we compile the financial statements and supplementary note disclosures in coordination with the city staff. We complete a review process with our audit team and partner and develop opinions on the financial statements and draft the following letters: the internal control and compliance report, the appropriation GAN limit, and the SAS 114. We review management discussion and analysis and finally issue our final reports. So this concludes our presentation. We'd be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Thank you for that report. Do we have any public comments on this, Nicole, at this time?
I have no written comments. Carrie, do we have anyone on the line?
No callers on the line this evening.
Okay. So with that, do we have any questions or comments from council? Mayor Pro Tem White.
Yes. So I'm first of all, it's a great report. It's fun this year to be able to really nitpick, because in years past we've had so much on our plate that we really didn't have the time to really go into it. But I'm looking at the internal controls report, and there's one item on there that had to do with the what was it? It was the one that it has been on our report in 18 and in 19 and again in 20. Was it the disperse? I'm sorry, I've missed it. If you know which item I'm talking about, Veronica, go ahead.
Mm,
I think this is, you're probably referring to the business license, or there was two of them that
Yes,
are carryovers.
yes.
And then the other one is with regard to overhead cost allocation.
So, I read through the other ones, and they, I understand you're not going to be perfect, and you're going to find some of these issues, and that's one reason we do an audit. But when there's one that we just don't seem to get right after 3 years, that's a concern that I'd like to address. And like I said, it's nice to be able to focus on something that in my mind is relatively minor compared to what we've looked at in the past years. So if you could just speak to that and why that keeps showing up.
Yeah, no, I'd be happy to. I think, so there's two items that are carryovers from prior years, and then there's three new findings. The two carryovers are, first of all, the business license process. And the concern there is that we didn't have somebody independent of the receipt of the cash doing a reconciliation on a regular basis. And it's something, it's a normal internal control requirement. We had intended to run reports out of our system, and then to have someone in the finance department do a cross comparison to that. And I'll be honest with you, with COVID and everything, it just got dropped. Lisa and I both thought it had been implemented. And in fact, I told the auditors, I said, we've done this. And in fact, we had not. So that's an oversight on our part. And it's something that we're in the process of correcting actually right now. I am going to be going back to Finance Committee every month until these are resolved to report to them the status. And that was something we agreed on and discussed at the last Finance Committee meeting. So that's the status on that one. It is something that we are actually running reports now out of the system. And then I have a staff member, it's independent of those that receive the funds for business license, that will be doing that reconciliation. The second item is the overhead cost allocation. And this, quite honestly, dropped down on our priority scheme due to a lot of other matters we were dealing with. It is something that I'm hoping to get the cost allocation renewed and bring in a new vendor this summer to be able to look at that. And the key that the audit finding was that we weren't applying an indirect rate or cost allocated rate to the grants, in this case, the federal grants. It was identified in the single audit report. And that's correct. That's a correct assertion. We haven't really lost any money, though. I dealt with this with the Finance Committee, that because all of our grants, we have spent the maximum amount under the grants or intend to on the projects themselves. So it didn't rise to the top of our scheme, of our priority scheme, but it will definitely be done this summer, and I'll be able to report back to the council and the Finance Committee on those findings.
Thank you. And again, I just want to say great progress. I'm really happy and impressed with everyone. So I appreciate that we've been moving in the right direction for years now, but I think this was a big jump. As far as I can tell, it's significantly better over last year. So good job to you and your team, Jeff. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Parton, I saw that your hand was raised. Mr. Martinez, I see you. Or Councilmember Martinez, are you good, Todd? Okay. Councilmember Martinez?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So the recurring finding was also a concern of mine. We had discussed this at the Finance and Audit Committee also, because it was a major concern of theirs. So thank you for clarifying that, Jeff. And the MD&A was very thorough. I was confident in that discussion as well. So thank you for those, and thank you for addressing that and being candid with the answer on that recurring finding. Just a couple of quick questions. One, I know we're trying to up the having that final audit in December now instead of January. Do we see any downside to trying to put the report a little earlier? Are we still going to be as meticulous as we always have? I mean, do we feel that that's a good time frame, or do we think we might be rushing it a little bit?
Well, I do know I'm going to probably ask either Charles or Scott to weigh in a little bit, because they do with this with a myriad of different cities. But I know that there's two things. One is that the Christmas holidays kind of get in there, and so it's a bit of a tight window. And I know this year we're also going to try and move to a CAFR for the first time, and that it may make it a little hard this year to get there in December. But I would like maybe either Charles or Scott to address their thoughts from the audit standpoint.
Hello, good evening, everyone. I'm Charles DeSimone. I'm the manager on the audit. It is certainly possible. A lot of the items that we use to audit, we need the support from the city staff. So the sooner the city staff is able to close the books, we are ready and available to set up even an earlier date for field work. That's what we need in order to issue financial statements earlier. Then there is the second part that Jeff touched up a little bit on it, that after we do our procedures and we provide a draft of the financial statements to management, then there is a turnaround time for them to review and make sure that whatever we have captured are the right numbers, double checking with the system, and then providing any comments or notes or discussions about the amounts and the disclosures and so on and so forth. So I think at that point is when, if we provide a draft late because we have done field work too late, then you run into the year-end crunch, and you have a lot of people who like to take vacation or time off in the last 2 weeks of the year. Everything slows down, and believe me, this doesn't only happen at the city level, it happens in our firm also. You have a lot of people who went really hard through the audit season and they try to take time off. It is certainly possible. We always have staff available, so it could happen.
Charles, if I may, and one of the issues that happened this year was the procurement process for the audit was a little later. I believe it was in June, and at that point, we start planning our audits. Jeff and Lisa, you guys will get an email from us probably in April, beginning of April, asking for dates that you want to proceed with the audit. So part of the issue was this year was that we had already planned all our audits that we knew we were going to have, and then when Beaumont came along, we kind of squeezed you guys in. So that was one of the issues as well.
Okay, thank you for that. So Jeff, then that begs the second part of my question is, are we confident that we have the staffing to undertake this? If we're going to go at a little, I call it accelerated pace, but it really isn't, but I don't think, but we have a super staff. Awesome. Lisa, thank you, everyone. They're doing a great job. Are we confident though, Jeff, that we can do this?
Yeah, I think so. I think some of it is in time and experience, and part of the thing is, that the more you get your arms around what it is you're dealing with, and the more we get things cleaned up. I think it's our goal to try and get the draft to Finance Committee. One of the things the Finance Committee asked for is a little more time to digest the numbers and to look at it. So we'll be targeting getting it to Finance Committee a little bit earlier so that they can have that time, and then hopefully we can get it to council. I don't know if we can get it to council in December. We'll try. But certainly it's my goal to always get it to council early in January. And so that will still be my target, at least to shoot for that.
All right. Well, I appreciate that. I think it's commendable goals. So I'm supportive of that. So thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Yes, sir. Councilmember Finn or Councilmember Santos, you both gentlemen good with the report?
I'm good to go. No questions. I had mine answered in committee.
Excellent.
I got some comment. Can I go on, Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Hey, Jeff, good job. I mean, did pretty good. Still, I'm looking on the balance sheet on this. I mean, what's the balance sheet on the fiscal year? And so I could, see the, asset and liability on this. Probably our auditor could provide that easily on this. So that will be a part of the financial statement on that. Now, I'm looking on the internal control. I'm more on the internal control. And looking on the internal control, that's great. I mean, there's no weaknesses on the financial. But the thing is, the significant deficiency went up to 5. I mean, when I get involved on the city on this, we got 67 by the state controller office. And we tackled that. We work on it. I mean, the whole council in here, we worked on that back in 2016, 17, and we worked out on that, and then we did a policy and procedures on every step of the way of the accounting and finance and the cash flow, and also the reporting of doing a variances on every report. I haven't seen that, tell you the truth. I mean, I haven't seen it. Balance sheet, financial statement, I haven't seen it for, probably I would say 6 months or 7 months from there. I'm not accusing, I mean, I'm just telling the fact. And I'm more on financial person, and I'm a number guy. And I haven't seen the, any variances of the cash flow, the our financial statement versus the budget, on that. That would be nice to have it. I mean, be on in line, and so the council knows what's going on. How many percentage that are we being used or not? I really appreciate that. This is off of my thing, but it pop up on my mind is the Christine Day. Every time she does do a work, I mean, I reported on the waterways on that report, perfectly done on that. I mean, I don't have questions on that. Now back on the deficiency on the internal control, and I noticed that on the I'll go on your 2020 001 on the disbursement, and I think we have to keep eye on that. I mean, I was surprised that they still find that we're not on the implementing our policy and procedures on that. I mean, I hope we shared that policy procedures to the auditor on this, because looking on the the conditions and the effect on this item, I could see it that there's a changes on vendors that but it's not being follow the procedures we have, that the other person should not do a certain level. The way they found it, I mean, I will commend the auditor. They reporting it really good on this. I mean, on this item, and they reported that accurately, and was not there's no procedures in there that there's a procedure, but it's being jumped on one employee to another employee, and that should not be the case for over 3 years now on this level of us. I mean, we went through on this problem before, challenges, I would say. And then on the payroll, I'll go on 002 on the payroll. It's amazing that we are changing, or any increases on payroll that on the records, and there's changes in there, promotions and everything is not being followed up or not being recorded properly on this, but it's now being corrected. I mean, that's good. I mean, and then on the item number 003 on the business, Jeff, you covered this really good. I mean, it's really nice, the cash flow and everything, and you you admitted that went through on the system, but it should not be. I mean, because as I said, I mean, we have a policy and procedures for 3 years on this. Now is the overhead allocation on this. This is my main concern on this. The internal control on this is not sufficient to claim indirect costs against federal and state grants. And there's a lot of grants, since then. And I think we have to do our accounting, due diligence on the accounting. Every penny has to be accounted. And then I don't want to be part of it if the federal and state come back to us and do another audit. And I know every 5 years they will do this. And probably my two things with you, Jeff, and the auditor, that would be nice if we could have access to the California state auditors. What's our rating? Are we on a high risk now? Are still in a high risk? Are we in a medium, or are we in low risk in the state? In the state, there's over 450 cities, and they always rate that. I didn't go that far. I mean, I know this. I mean, so that would be great that, if we could, gauge the city of Beaumont, what kind of risk were we at? I mean, when we started this, I mean, I got involved with the city. The first thing I asked our fund investors or our fund, people that we hired, I asked what's our rating with the bond. And we even really not even on B during that time. Now, probably right now, I heard that when they reported it, we are AA, which is, I salute that. I mean, I hope we are on that stage now, that the risk factor, we should be in the middle at least on that. That would be nice to have that. But overall, Jeff, you did excellent job. Todd, everybody. I mean, it's nice to share this instead of shoving it underneath the carpet. And the auditor, I will really commend the auditor that they did their job. And thank you, Mayor. That's all I could share right now.
Yeah, I think that only follow-up I would have to that, thank you, is that when you change auditors for a reason, because there's a need to get a fresh set of eyes in there and to be able to look at things. And it's really expected that a new set of eyes is going to come in and find things that maybe the other auditors did, because they have maybe a different focus or how they do risk analysis and things like that. And so we were not really surprised when they came out with some new findings. I mean, obviously you would like to have no findings, but it also, I think, is also very kind of warming to me to know that they found some things. That means they were looking deeply and they were looking hard for, so it's kind of a bittersweet thing. But the reality is we did ask them to take a look at our payroll to make sure that everything was dialed in, and they also identified the issues with needing a better segregation of duties on the vendor changes and whatnot. We think all three of them were really strong findings, and we agreed with them. We do have some mitigation on all three of those, but those mitigations are not enough to say that the corrective action isn't necessary. So we are taking those corrective actions. We've already taken on the payroll, we've already done that. With regard to the vendors, we have just recently put that in the hands of a person that's totally separate from AP. So we have a segregation of duties now between those two processes. And lastly, with regard to the last finding, I don't want there to be any misconception that there's no computation of the monies that we're spending on federal grants. We are absolutely tracking all those expenditures appropriately. So I just didn't want there to be any thoughts that we weren't. So thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
Mr. Parton?
Yes, I was going to say on the credit worthiness rating, and Councilmember Santos, I think you may have been talking about like the S&P ratings, those types of things. You know, we had a bond security rating back a couple years ago when we sold the 90 million that we needed to for the wastewater project. They looked at the utility fund. They did not look at general government. So that bond security rating was, I think, A+. They did say that one of the conditions that they wanted to see was what the city's financials look like after 3 to 5 years. So we are subject to be able to go back and get a re-rating at some point if we deem that appropriate. If that happens, we could probably get, you know, depending on what they say, we could see an increased enhancement there. We've done a couple rated CFD bond sales, and our CFDs rated high on those that we did have rated. And that was due to the fact that we were selling those bonds when we were significantly built out. So they're receiving healthier bond ratings, and they were perceived to be very low risk instruments. We don't have general fund debt, so we have not done a financial security bond rating for the general fund and for general government. So we wouldn't do that until we were ready to potentially look at some sort of bond issuance or bond sale. So, so I just wanted to make sure, you know, when we talk about that, we have to be careful, you know, as we discuss what the city's financial position is. That's a critical issue for SEC and for some of those oversight committees. So we just want to be careful. I'm just trying to be very careful in terms of discussing what our credit worthiness ratings are and what those bond security ratings look like. So, so that's kind of where we stand right now on bond security.
Thank you, Mr. Park. Okay, we have no further comments from council. Jeff, I just want to congratulate you. Thank you for bringing this to us so quickly. Mayor Pro Tem White, when we first started on council, were we a year out on audits, a year late, or not quite?
We were 18 months.
18 months.
I think at one point, right before we got on, we were just almost pushing 2 years.
So from 2015 being almost 2 years to today being on time, I appreciate that effort. Come a long ways. Okay. This is a receive and file item, so I will make a motion to go ahead and receive and file.
Second the motion.
All right. Roll call on that?
Councilmember Santos,
Yes.
Councilmember Fenn,
Yes.
Councilmember Martinez,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem White,
Yes.
Mayor Lara.
Yes. That brings us to item 6, which is the First Amendment to the professional service agreements with Interwest Consulting Group, Inc., Scott Fazekas and Associates, and Wilden Engineering for building and plan check services for a 1-year extension through July 1st of 2022. I have a staff report from building official, Mr. Rico.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor, City, council members. Yes, I am the building official with the Department of Building and Safety for the city. My name is Pedro Rico. Very nice to meet you, and for those who have not met me before. On July 1st, 2018, the city entered into 3-year contracts with 3 different consultants that provide services of plan checking and staffing for the Department of Building and Safety. The consultants are Interwest Consulting Group, Scott Fazekas and Associates, and Wilden Engineering. This action item tonight is for the 1-year extensions for the 3-year contracts that are to terminate on June 30th of this year. These consultants have licensed professional engineers and certified building inspection staff with years of experience to fulfill the operational needs of the department. They meet the plan review turnaround time in 10 business days for initial submittals and 5 business days and rechecks. The cost of these services are paid 100% by the applicants through the city's existing plan check and permit fees. And the consultants have agreed to hold their current rate structure through the terms of the existing agreements. We don't pay unless we use them. The city pays consultants 75% of the city's building plan check fees. We keep 25% for purpose of administration. We recommend the extensions with the 3 consultants to keep multiple service providers to respond to the needs of the shifting construction development community, to continue maintaining the timeliness of plan checking and billing inspection services. Staff recommends the approval of 1-year extensions to the professional service agreements with Interwest Consulting Group, Scott Fasicas and Associates, and Wilton Engineering for building and plan check services. That concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much. Nicole, do we have any public comments at this time?
I have no written comments. Carrie, do we have anyone on the line?
No one on the line.
Okay. We have any questions from council regarding this extension? If not, I'll look, Councilmember Finn.
Yes, hi. Quick question. Does the city follow the same general plan where if they're doing, like, for example, that we did with the audit, that you have an auditor for so many years? Does the city have a general policy to stay with the same firm for a certain amount of time? And if so, how far into it are we with these firms?
Not when it comes to, yes, thank you, Mr. Finn. Yes, not when it comes to these type of services. From my understanding and previous experiences, when I started here, some of these are being used for quite some years. I started in late 2019, and we already had them. But from what I hear is we've been using them for other contracts in the past.
Councilmember Finn, the most recent RFP was done 3 years ago. So the way the contract was structured was a 3-year contract with 2 1-year extensions, and that's per the purchasing policy. And so we'd like to bring that to you early enough so that if council directs us to go out to RFP, we have enough time in order to do that prior to the contract expiring. These are contracts that are they're not of a monetary certain value because we don't know how much may come in a plan check. And that's why we have 3 of them. We can also rotate between them given any particular project that may come in a specific timeline. So if one of the plan check services is overly busy because like this year we had to do the new model homes with the new code, we can jump to another one for a commercial.
And Mr. Mayor, I just, since we have a new council member, would add to that in response to Councilmember Finn's question. We do have a municipal code provision that the council adopted as part of its policy for procurement of professional services, and it's contained in section 3.02.070 of the municipal code. It provides that the term of any professional services contract awarded shall be a maximum of 5 years. Contracts shall be submitted to the city council annually for approval, renewal, termination, non-renewal, or extension. Extension of a contract beyond the initial term shall be approved by a 4/5 vote of the city council. And there's a prohibition on professional service contracts containing an evergreen clause, which is a clause that states that it automatically renews over and over. And that came about because with the past administration, there was a history of contracts just going on, for decades with no periodic review by the council. And so the council adopted that policy. So you have a maximum of 5-year term. You can go beyond that 5-year term, but it requires a 4/5 vote. But then each year you review the contracts.
Thank you very much, Mr. Payne. Councilmember Finn, are you good, or you have an additional question?
Just one more part then, just so I fully understand. So we're looking to extend this for 1 more year. Should we get to year 5 next year and go to extend? And if I understand Mr. Pinckney correctly, would we need an RFP at that point? Once we hit or working on an RFP in year 5, so then that way we don't lapse the contract, correct?
Yeah, what our intention would be, Councilmember Finn, is to, if council approves it this year, if we're still happy with the services throughout the duration of this year, we'd probably come to you for the last extension next year. And as soon as that's approved, we would start working on an RFP in order to put in place for the next 5 years past that, new services.
Okay, thank you. And just last question. Has staff considered, or I'm sure they have, but when was the last time a major consideration on this to continue with services? Or would the city ever have any plans on bringing this in-house? I've had some experience in my profession with submitting plans both at city and county levels with cities in LA, mostly LA County. And man, I'll tell you what, that's one operation. But I don't know if that's something that would overburden staff and it's just kind of worth time and effort to contract this out, or with us being a building hotspot for many years to come, is that something that might make some sense to bring those services in-house in the future?
What we have asked Mr. Rico to do as part of the charge when we entered into COVID and we're looking at some budget crunches was to bring as much of that in-house as possible. He has done so, but where we can't meet the 10-day turnaround timeline, we do actually send that out in order to make sure that we are turning plans around as quick as possible. There are a couple of things that we are specifically doing in-house. We do quite a bit of the solar in-house. When we promoted one of the permit techs to permit tech / plan reviewer, we charged him with the majority of the solars that come in-house. It's a set fee. And so as opposed to not sending all of that money out, the bigger plans we do send out. So like an Amazon is definitely going to go out. It's the complexity of it will just overwhelm the building department. Right now, the building department consists of the building official, two building inspectors, and a permit tech / plan reviewer, and a permit tech. And so it's really a total of 5 folks working on all building, and that's both plan check as well as inspection. And so where we can't meet our turnarounds, we will bring in plan checkers and we will bring in contract inspectors.
Okay, very good. And I just to commend everyone on the program itself. 10 business days is a nice window, and so forth. And I think it certainly meets, with industry expectations and that kind of stuff, and gets things done still in a timely manner. So good job, everybody. Thanks. I'm good to go.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem White, I see you got your hand raised.
Yeah, just sort of for clarification, Mr. Pinckney, because I think I heard you say it both ways, but just to clarify, we're at the end of 3 years on this contract. We're considering year 4, and next year we could be considering year 5. Year 4 and year 5 is a 4/5 vote. When we get to year 5, I think we had decided we wanted to go out to RFP automatically at the end of year 5, or we want to be considering another option at the end of year 5, regardless of what the council vote would be. Is that correct?
So if the initial term is 3 years, to extend it beyond that initial term would be a 4/5 vote.
Just years 3, 4, and 5, though, right? We couldn't go to year 6 with a 4/5 vote.
I think you could. There's nothing that I see in the code that requires you to go out to RFP at that point. You could extend it with a 4/5 vote, but I understand your point that may be the desire of the council to go out to RFP periodically on these.
Okay, thank you. That's
Thank
all
you.
I had.
I see no other questions. Do I have a motion?
Mayor, I'll move to approve a 1-year extension to the professional service agreements with Interwest Consulting Group Incorporated, Scott Fazekas and Associates Incorporated, and Wilden Engineering for building and plan check services.
I'll second.
Okay.
Councilmember Santos,
Yes.
Councilmember Finn,
Yes.
Councilmember Martinez,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem White,
Yes.
Mayor Lara.
Yes. Action item 7, approval of the second amendment to the professional service agreement with Moffett and Nicole for environmental documentation services for Pennsylvania Avenue widening project in the amount of $64,528, and with the total contract amount not to exceed $411,699. We have a staff report by Mr. Hart.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I apologize. I'm having a little internet issues, so I won't have any video for this. Probably not going to hurt a whole lot of people's feelings, but so yeah, the item before us is a contract amendment for Moffett Nickel. Back in December of 2017, Moffett Nickel was engaged for a series of Pennsylvania Avenue projects, environmental documentation, not only the Pennsylvania widening, but the grade separation and the Pennsylvania interchange itself. The scope of services for the original contract included the data collection, document review, field studies, technical studies, and environmental documentation. In January of 2019, the first amendment for their contract was authorized for additional scopes related to regulatory permitting that was anticipated that would be necessary prior to construction. We are now wrapping up the final design, getting this project ready to bid, and trying to get a draft environmental document on the street, which is nearly pending within the next month or so. As there's been a few additional items that have warranted additional effort on behalf of Moffett Nickel. The primary two that we've encountered is in some of these, let me preface that, are related to a modification in the footprint in order to constrain the budget and the total project cost and keep it within the project budget. But one was the regulatory changes associated with SB 743. SB 743, as we've discussed previously, is a deviation or a change from the way that we assess traffic. Traffic was for as long as I can remember, has been assessed based on level of service, and it was a shift from level of service to vehicle miles traveled. The timing of this project warranted an analysis for vehicle miles traveled, and we had to engage a consultant to do so. Additionally, there's been some deviations in the way that the permitting for jurisdictional waters that fall under the United States Army Corps of Engineers have been addressed. There's been a delegation of some of those authorities to the state, which was intended to expedite some of these efforts. Is the United States Army Corps of Engineers has been a bottleneck for many years on many projects, but there was a change in document preparation in order to get those submitted to the state agencies. Moffett Nickel has provided a proposal to provide these services. We are shooting for a draft environmental document within the next 3 to 4 weeks. And hopefully we are looking to get this project advertised for construction in the same time frame. Moffett Nickel's effort for the Pennsylvania widening project will be completed within 6 to 8 months, but additionally, on top of the compensation for the services for the Pennsylvania widening project, there's also a time extension that where we can keep them on board for efforts related to the grade separation and, more importantly, the Pennsylvania interchange project itself. Within your staff report, you will see a tabular breakdown of the 3 Pennsylvania Avenue projects and the associated costs and remaining budget. And with that, the staff would like to recommend the second contract amendment to the professional services agreement for the Pennsylvania Avenue widening projects for Moffett and Nickel. And I am happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Hart. Nicole, do we have any public comments on this item?
I have no written comments. Carrie, do we have anyone on the line?
No callers on the line.
Thank you. So I'll open it up for council discussion. Not seeing any hands. I'll open it up for a motion.
Mayor, I'll move to approve the second amendment to the professional services agreement with Moffett Nickel for environmental documentation services for the I-10 Pennsylvania Avenue interchange improvement project, Pennsylvania Avenue widening project, and Pennsylvania Avenue grade separation project in the amount of $64,528 with the total contract amount not to exceed $411,669, and authorize the mayor to execute the amendment on behalf of the city.
I'll second that. Have a roll call on that, please.
Councilmember Santos,
Yes.
Councilmember Fenn,
Yes.
Councilmember Martinez,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem White,
Yes.
Mayor Lara.
Yes. The motion carries. It brings us to action item number 8, award of contract to Four Seasons Roofing, Inc. in the amount of $49,800 for re-roof repair to the city of Beaumont's fire station building located at 628 Maple Avenue. Have Ms. Gibbs doing a staff report.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Good evening. The item that you have before you tonight is the award of contract. City staff went out to bid on publicpurchase.com in December, and we did a job walk, a mandatory job walk shortly thereafter. We accepted proposals. We received 5 cost proposals. They were all qualified contractors. The lowest contract proposal received was from Four Seasons Roofing in the amount of $49,800. The city attorney has drafted an agreement. The cost for this project is included in your adopted capital improvement program. There is $250,000 earmarked for fire station improvements for Station 66, and this would be roughly about $50,000 of that $250,000. And so with that, staff recommends that City Council award the contract to Four Seasons Roofing in the amount of $49,800 to re-roof and do a roof repair for the fire station. This one is located on Maple Avenue, almost across the street from City Hall. And also to authorize the city manager to execute the agreement on behalf of the city, as well as approve any necessary change orders within 10%, which is $4,980. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gibbs. We have any comments, public comments on this?
I have no written comments. Carrie, do we have anyone on the line?
No callers on the line.
So I will open it up to council for discussion. Councilmember Finn.
Yes, thank you. So just getting a little bit more familiar with the RFP process and so forth and being new. Just, I guess out of curiosity, were those proposals, were they relatively close, or are they the big range that you saw on this one? And it looks like with Four Seasons Roofing, I'm assuming we've got a local company since we have a neighborhood called Four Seasons. But then the other, I guess the second question would be is, do we see a lot of local companies participating in those proposals, or are they kind of all over Southern California? I don't know where they come from and so forth. So just a general feel for, when we put an RFP out there, what are we attracting?
I can tell you, Councilmember Fenn, that using publicpurchase.com on this particular RFP, we saw contractors coming as far away as Los Angeles. When we had over 20 contractors that did the mandatory job walk with us. The 5 that you have before you, although I don't know exactly what city they're from, most of them are local. There was I wouldn't say a wide range in pricing. The first 2 were relatively close, and then the next 3 after that, there were 5 total, and the next 3 after that were a little bit farther spread out. And that may be travel time in their cost. Like I said, we had people from as far away as LA, and that is the beauty of publicpurchase.com. It does go as far out as we want it to. We can control the radius when we put in the scope. We can put all of the state of California if we wanted to. So we try to keep it within Southern California. Obviously, contractors that are coming in from LA are going to include that travel time in their bid, which doesn't really help the city any. So I know Four Seasons is relatively close.
Okay, very good. I appreciate the info. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilmember Finn. I see no other hands at this point. Look for a motion.
Mayor, I'll make the motion to award a contract to Four Seasons Roofing, Inc. in the amount of $49,800 for repair, roof repair to the City of Beaumont's Fire Station building located at 628 Maple Avenue, and authorize the city manager to execute the contract and approve any necessary change orders up to $4,980.
Mr. Mayor, I'll second that motion.
Thank you. Roll call, Nicole.
Councilmember Santos,
Yes.
Councilmember Fenn,
Yes.
Councilmember Martinez,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem White,
Yes.
Mayor Lara.
Yes. Thank you very much. This brings us to action item 8, request for wastewater service to a 44-acre parcel, assessor's parcel number 413-290-041, located on Desert Lawn Drive in the city of Calamasa, tentative track map 37802. Staff report by Ms. Day.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is a request from D.R. Horton Homes to serve wastewater to a property that's in the city of Calamasa. In your staff report, we provided a map showing the location of the tract. You'll see it's just outside your jurisdictional boundary. State law does require that the city only serve within the jurisdictional boundary. There is a provision within state law that the two cities can agree to service, since Calamasa is not a utility service provider in this instance. And that action would then have to go before the LAFCO board as part of a annexation into our service area. What makes this track a little bit different than some of the other tracks adjacent in the city of Calamasa is that this track is actually served by Beaumont Cherry Valley Water District. And so the recent policy change that Yucaipa Valley Water District implemented was that they did not want to serve wastewater to a tract or a development in which that they did not also get to serve water. So with this being in the Beaumont Cherry Valley Water District service boundary, it does leave this tract without a wastewater provider, without LAFCO action that would remove that from Cherry Valley. Cherry Valley does plan to service this property and does have lines as shown on a map in your staff report that is nearby this particular tract. D.R. Horton is looking to put approximately 200 residential homes on this tract. This would not be a huge impact to the wastewater treatment plant. The conveyance system would need some upgrades that would be developer driven and would have to be constructed or improved by the developer. We don't know the extent of that because the first step in the equation needed to be the two councils agreeing to this particular service, or agreeing to at least look at the particular service. If in fact the council chooses to direct staff to move forward with the developer tonight, there are two subsequent actions that would need to happen. As part of your brine line permit and the wastewater treatment plant, we would actually have to go back to SAPA and OCSD to ask for an out of jurisdiction service. With that would likely come a multi-jurisdictional agreement that would allow us to implement our pre-treatment ordinances in the city of Calamasa. This would be similar to what we're planning to do with the settlement properties that are part of the overall settlement from the Fairway Canyon Tournament Hills annexation. In addition to that, then the developer would need to go through all of the items that we would require of even our developers. So they would need to do a hydraulic study to figure out what pinch points may be in the conveyance system and how we would convey that water over to the treatment plant. In addition to that, they would need to start working on the LAFCO. This would have to go to the LAFCO commission and would be voted on at the commission. There's a specific clause within the state law that requires that. And so what we're asking tonight from the city council is, in fact, would you be willing to entertain this, to allow this developer to start to work on some of those items, allow the staff to start to work on some of those items? If council does agree to that tonight, then we would ask for the developer to make a deposit within the city in order for us to begin to work on the SOPA and OCSD. So they would fully cover all the staff costs associated with that. And if the council chooses to move forward, we think this does secure this staying within the Beaumont Cherry Valley Water District. So there's definitely a benefit in doing that. The city of Calamasa entertained this at their last council meeting, and the council voted, and we attached that minute order excerpt to your staff report. The developer is on the line and is happy to answer any questions that I may not be able to answer, as well as the city of Calamasa is on the line. Their planning director is on the line in case you have any questions for them. I'm happy to answer any additional questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Day. Do we have any public comments on this?
I have no written comments. Carrie, do we have anyone on the line?
No one's on the line.
Okay, open it for council discussion. Councilmember Martinez.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So I'm glad to see that it would have a minimal impact on the plant capacity. And I was concerned about costs, so I'm glad to see it's a kind of pay your own way type where they are going to be paying for that. My concern, though, is to making sure we get an accurate estimate for the conveyance. The last thing I would want is have to be caught with the bill that we would have to make up for. So just to share my concern on that level.
Yes, sir.
And are we opening up any can of worms with permits or anything by adding something into our system? Or is this something that's kind of standard, and LAFCO and SOPA and stuff would kind of assume that that was something that can be done?
I don't know how SOPA and OCSD, I actually haven't started that conversation yet because I wanted to see where the city council might sit first. That would be a call I would probably make tomorrow to see if they would even entertain it. So it would be a change to our brine line permit. There also would be some subsequent action. You passed a resolution as part of our preparing to be in the OCSD SOPA brine line that said we would not serve outside of our jurisdiction unless they annexed into the city limits. We would need to modify that resolution, but I don't think that we would entertain that until we knew the actual language that SOPA and OCSD would want to see.
So this direction we would be giving, it's enough for you to go to the next level and do that research, but not commit us yet, correct? Until we can get answers, because I'd be a little uncomfortable if you were to come back and say, well, this popped up and this popped up, and we're already getting ourselves, in motion.
Yeah, I think your commitment is to the developer that we will explore it, and that they don't want to spend a tremendous amount of money without knowing that you would entertain it. I think if there's anything adverse that would come back to the city and put our permit in jeopardy, or we wouldn't be allowed, then absolutely we would not be able to serve. So if LAFCO said yes, but OCSD said no, we're done at that point.
All right, I think that's a reasonable approach, and I'm not, opposed to the project in any way. I just want to reassure that we're not opening up something that's going to damage us. And so, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yes, sir. Mayor Pro Tem White, excuse me.
Yeah, Christine, what would be the estimated timeline on hearing back from LAFCO on a final approval? What are we looking at? Months, years?
It's months. So typically what will happen is they would make application through us. We have a standard application fee that we would charge them in order to prepare the annexation application. Prior to that, they'll need to do a hydraulic analysis, which we now have a hydraulic model. So we would work with them. They would pay us a deposit. We would run that. I think that's check that box off first so they know what their infrastructure costs may look like. And then once we make application to LAFCO, it's from what LAFCO has told us in the past with some other developments, it's a 3 to 4 month timeline to get on their commission agenda.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Finn?
Yes, thank you. So I understand the Beaumont Cherry Valley Water District is a irrigation district, and so they cannot perform sewer services. What would be their alternative if this didn't work? Would the builder be able to go back to either South Mesa or Yucaipa Valley Water District to have them serve water to them?
So Yucaipa Valley, our understanding in dealing with them on some other items is that they will not take this without taking the water. And Beaumont Cherry Valley wants to retain the water. So I think then that puts the developer and the potential seller, nothing that the city of Beaumont would be involved in the middle, but it definitely leaves them in a bit of a quandary without service.
Okay, and then at the end of the day, when the neighborhood is finished and the homeowner is paying the bill, would they would not be paying any different rate than an existing, Beaumont customer would pay, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and then there was no extra fees that maybe a Beaumont customer, a current Beaumont customer paid to help expand the sewer treatment plant other than in the rate itself. So for example, I guess what I'm alluding to is there wouldn't be, the new guy doesn't get to pay less or the new guy has to pay a lot more. It's still going to be the same and treated equally between.
That's correct. Them, right? So what they would be responsible for the capacity and connection fees that are associated with the wastewater treatment plant. They would be 100% responsible for their conveyance costs of those 200 homes back to the treatment plant. Today we do have a set rate, but we intend to come back to the council in the future. I would say, I think it's in the next year's CIP in order to do a new rate study. And so that could potentially change, but it would be the same that Beaumont residents or Beaumont connections would pay if a developer came into Beaumont.
Okay, so if the new rate study suggested a higher rate, it's all customers pay the higher rate. They're not going to cherry pick neighborhoods, correct?
That's correct. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. I'm good.
City Manager, Mr. Parton.
Yeah, I think one point of clarification on that rate, there could be a rate differential for out-of-city ratepayers. That's something that we would have to evaluate. And I believe, for example, up in Cherry Valley, we charge an additional amount, administrative charge on top of the city rate. So they could pay a little bit more. That's something we'd definitely look at when we do the rate analysis.
We did, Mr. Parton, and then we got rid of that charge went away in this rate study.
But we can and we should look at that with the new rate.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Parton. Couple things. Go ahead. Councilmember Santos.
Yes.
Are you?
Yeah. Hey, Christine, looking on the map on this, I mean, on this subject, property, we have the line already in there on the Beaumont Cherry Valley Water District. Is that correct? I mean, it's right there on the property.
Yes, it runs adjacent to the property. I believe it's in the right of way.
Okay. So does the our sewer system is there also?
No, sir. We would have to look at the topography of the sewer system. Okay. And the best points of connection in order to, we would always try to gravity flow first. And then if we can't, we would lift it and bring it over into our system. So we'll have to look at the actual topography of the land.
Very good. Thank you. I think this is a good project. I'm with it. I mean, Calamasa is working with you closely on this, and LAFCO is working with you. I think, I'm on board on this. If I need to, Mayor, do a motion, I will do it. But you have the last word on this.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Finn, did you have another question, sir? Oh, okay. Just two things. I mean, there's a lot of vacant land around this one particular tract. I would be concerned about having to serve other developments around that area. Would that be an issue or potential?
I don't think it would be an issue, but I think it's a possibility that you may get some additional requests that come from this. Many of the tracts around this tract that aren't within the settlement agreement that the city of Beaumont and the city of Calamasa did are falling into this same issue. So they'll be in the Beaumont Cherry Valley service area for water, but in no one's service area for wastewater. So you may see some additional things come forward as land develops around that area.
Okay, and obviously we always have the ability to deny that request. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and then, and I think you may have touched on this already. Do we know if we'd have any additional lift station maintenance? Because I know those can be costly, and those always backup generators and maintenance. And
what we would do is work with the developer. Again, we would always want to gravity flow into our system if at all possible. I haven't actually looked at the topography of this to see where the connection points may be. We had some real preliminary discussion, but I haven't actually seen it on the system, and we would want your consultant that is performing your master plan and hydraulic study to actually look at that for the best points. If in fact this track would require some sort of lift station, I think that's something that you could come back and work some sort of agreement with the developer for. There's some costs associated with that. But they would certainly be required to build it to the standard that you've adopted.
okay,
But we would do everything we can not to have a lift station.
great. Okay, thank you. I see no other questions from council, so I will look for a motion.
Mayor, can
Yes,
I would like to make a motion to approve or move forward for wastewater service as requested. Is that good enough?
Yes, I believe it is.
Thank you.
And I'll second that.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Councilmember Santos,
Yes.
Councilmember Fenn,
Yes.
Councilmember Martinez,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem White,
Yes.
Mayor Lara.
Yes. Okay, so that brings us to action item number 10, approval to unfreeze the support services supervisor position for the police department. Chief Delis, we have a staff report from you, sir.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm requesting approval to unfreeze the support services supervisor position within the Beaumont Police Department. So going back just a couple years ago, we had this position filled. It served the department well, and that person had resigned to pursue other endeavors. In analyzing what we currently had in the staff, we knew that internally we needed more time to get somebody to that rank. It's like a civilian sergeant, if you will. And so they ensure the day-to-day operation. So you had approved the lead dispatcher position, which is like a senior, right? And it allowed us to develop internal talent. It gave us a couple years, but it was really filled as a temporary. The long range plan was always temporary with that. Not that the leads aren't important within the rank structure, but we're at the point now where we need the support services supervisor opened so that the level of work is at the right range. So currently we have a sworn police lieutenant overseeing these day-to-day operations, but as you all know, our 3 lieutenants each command an entire division. They carry out the mission and the vision of the office of the chief. They have a lot of duties. And so for them to come from that 30,000 foot level or to get into the 5,000 foot level, if you will, and go back and forth, it's not the best practice. And so we would keep the sworn lieutenant over the entirety of the operations because it does have animal control, which oversees, contract for Calamasa and the Morongo Reservation with animal control, records, property, dispatch. These are all very critical functions of the police department. They're what keeps the boots on the ground, if you will. And so, but what the support services supervisor would allow him to do is focus on some higher level tasks. And then this person would oversee the day-to-day functions and ensure compliance with the Department of Justice, FBI, our courts, and our district attorney's office, in all those regards. So it's very critical. We now are comfortable after this 2-year pause on this position that we have internal qualified candidates. And so we would not need to go outside, and we could appoint internally. With that, we estimated about a $6,000 difference if we were beginning from the fiscal year, but since we're about 2/3 into it, there could just be an offset by a few $1,000s. But we've had some positions vacant as we recruit the best talent in our sworn ranks in our different areas, so we can absorb that. And so the recommended action is to unfreeze the support services supervisor position in the Beaumont Police Department. With that, more than happy to answer any questions council may have.
Thank you, Chief. Nicole, do we have any public comments on this action item?
I have no written comments. Carrie, do we have anyone on the line?
No callers on the line.
Thank you very much. So I will open it up to council for any discussion. I see.
Mayor, I'd like to move to unfreeze the support services supervisor position in the Beaumont Police Department.
Mr. Mayor, I'll second that.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Roll call, Nicole?
Councilmember Santos?
Aye.
Councilmember Fenn?
Yes.
Councilmember Martinez?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem White?
Yes.
Mayor Lara?
Yes. Okay, that brings us to action item 11, review of local emergency declaration established via the adoption of City of Beaumont Resolution number 2020-07, adopted on March 17th, 2020. City Manager, Mr. Parton, with a staff report.
Thank you, Mayor. And we've evaluated this several times now. So it seems like March 17th, 2020 was about 10 years ago, doesn't it? This was the resolution that authorized the establishment of an emergency declaration. It does have some limited authorities that are granted to the city manager, particularly kind of in issues related to taking appropriate steps to mitigate or respond to kind of any emergency conditions. One of the things we felt was important in the emergency declaration is we're still under an existing state emergency declaration, which kind of rolls down to the county and to us. And so we felt it was appropriate to keep this emergency declaration in place, particularly as there may be some more federal dollars that may come down, which the declaration may be important to qualify us for some of those dollars. So should city council opt to leave this emergency declaration resolution in place, we would need to bring it back to city council no later than April 6th of this year for reevaluation. With that, Mayor, turn it back to you and council for questions.
Thank you. Nicole, do we have any public comments on this action item?
No written comments. Carrie, do we have anyone on the line?
No callers on the line.
Okay, I will open up for council discussion. I see no hands. We'll look for a motion from council. Anyone?
Well, I would, but I can't find it on the agenda, so. I just cleared the agenda. That's one thing.
Okay.
I didn't want to hog the show, but I'll move
Well,
that we
by the
follow.
time I find it, forget it.
I move that we follow the recommended action and make no changes to the emergency declaration.
I'll second. That I can do.
Councilmember Santos?
Yes.
Councilmember Fenn?
Yes.
Councilmember Martinez,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem White,
Yes.
Mayor Lara.
Yes, thank you very much. This brings us to legislative updates and discussion. Mr. Warsinski.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Before you tonight is the monthly report for January of 2021. So as we know, the legislators started their new 2-year legislative session in January on the 11th. The deadline to propose all new bills is by February 19th. So we are currently reviewing the ones that have been introduced, as well as tracking which ones are kind of on the horizon. Topics expected to dominate the legislature's time this year is probably going to be the COVID-19 relief packages and response, climate resiliency, of course, housing, dealing with homelessness, social equity, and police reform. Included in your packet, like I said, is the February 19th bill introduction deadline. And then looming is the March 25th spring recess. And that begins the adjournment of that initial legislative session, and then they go on recess. On the 8th of January, Governor Newsom released his January budget proposal. Very lengthy document. I'm not going to go over the entirety of that tonight, but the key components of that budget for this year have been contained within the Townsend update that you guys have in your agenda packet. There was a eviction moratorium extension done in January as well. At the federal level, we know that in December, the Congress approved what we were referring to as Phase 4, right? Phase 4 coronavirus relief. They've done that. A lot of that money is coming out now. So we see increased payments or new payments into the Paycheck Protection Program, additional unemployment aid, those types of things. As we have a new president, as of a couple weeks ago, a week and a half ago or so, President Biden has introduced his own coronavirus relief plan. And that's something that's being studied at our local level, and I think every state within the nation is kind of looking at what components are being placed into that plan. Congress itself is also looking at a Phase 5 coronavirus relief package, so you can see the components of that. You may have heard some rumblings or some discussion about a filibuster occurring within Congress last week, and that relates to this Phase 5 aid package. There is a way through the filibuster, and that's explained through the reconciliation bill process within your agenda packet. And I think that concludes my report for tonight, unless you guys have any questions that I can answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Warsinski. Council, we have any questions for Kyle? Oh, I'm sorry. Councilmember Finn.
Yes, thank you. Kyle, in your previous report on the matter, you had mentioned that there was maybe a state legislation that was potentially in place to extend the eviction moratorium until the end of the calendar year or till September or something like that. Do you know if that is still in the works now that the feds and Governor Newsom extended it to the end of June? Do you know if that dropped off or?
You know, I'll have to research that one. I would suspect that if it's been introduced, it's going to continue to move forward through the legislative process. I will double check on that bill that we're talking about to see if it's going to be changed or if it's still going to run its course through the legislature to take action post that June 30th deadline.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had.
Councilmember Martinez.
Yeah, just real quick, Kyle, have you heard of any mechanisms that might be spelled out here in the governor's plans? Like particularly this 1.1 billion for small business relief. Do you know, is it something that they're planning to do from state to county to city again, or have you heard of any new way of doing it, or continuing the old way, or just kind of curious about?
You know, in my initial review of the the package, it looks to me like they'll probably end up doing a similar grant program to what they have currently today. I'm not exactly sure how that's going to work. The reason I say that is because the Biden plan also includes direct payments to county and local governments, although the methodology or the apportionments that go to each jurisdiction has not been released yet. So I can't guarantee that they're not going to go through that county down to the city approach. I will reach out to Townsend and ask if they have any further clarification on that, or if we should be expecting a state-run small business aid program if the budget's passed as presented.
Okay. All right. Just curious. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. I see no other hands. So, okay, Kyle, thank you very much for that report. That brings us to council reports. Councilmember Santos.
Yeah, it's me. Make it quick, man. I mean, on this one here, yesterday, that was really nice. I mean, I'm with the Mayor Mike Lara on the Beaumont banning transit logo ribbon cutting. That was great. That's like the first one in the year, man. I mean, having this, and I really appreciate the the reception that Miss Gibbs and Doug and Ashley, and especially Todd showed up. So anyway, that was good. I mean, you have to see the buses we have, the banning, and also Beaumont is beautiful. The way it's designed, and our mayor jump inside and really nice bus in there. There's a camera on inside, camera on the rear on both sides, and I think really nice to jump in there and take a ride on that. Other than that, that's the thing that I have on the to report. And lastly, I'd like to thank the PD and the experience I have. The response really good. Todd really very helpful, and also in our staff. Good job, guys. really proud of you guys. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Santos. Councilmember Finn.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I had a busy 2 weeks again. First off, I just want to make a comment, just public knowledge. My replacement, San Gorgonio Pass Water Agency, the board had selected Robert Ibarra from Banning. He was a member of the president of the Banning Chamber of Commerce. So he's the new seventh member over there. But I did attend virtually through Facebook training the new Mayors and Council Members Academy from the California League of Cities. It was a 2 full-day event plus 2 half-days. Learned some good stuff from there, and having been in public service, that has helped. So I understood most of what they were talking about, but it was a nice fine-tuning and so forth to help me in this position. And did attend the Finance and Audit, and we saw the results of this evening where they asked for an extra week to review and ask questions of staff. So that was beneficial. And I think that was about, I think that was about it. So anything else was just some minor things where I just attended meetings that I was an alternate for. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Finn. Councilmember Martinez.
Thank you, Mayor. Just real briefly, I really like seeing the rental equipment program as a part of the business assistant program. Very, very proud of that, and hope the word's getting out. So great idea on that move. I attended RCA yesterday. Basically, we had a discussion on the MSHDP fees, but mostly we were talking about policy adjustments as we go through the transition period of RCA being managed by RCTC. We had a lot of discussion about basically procedures, administrative procedures and so forth, but also about the management transition in general. So that was pretty much our main topic yesterday. And of course, we concluded with discussion of the Aurora chub. Aurora chub. I can't say that too well. It's a 4-inch small fish. The chub is a fish, as a part of the monitoring for endangered species and protected species for our area. And that's all I have. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, sir. Mayor Pro Tem White.
I always like to hear your report, Mr. Martinez, because the minute you go into the endangered species, you can just see the wheels turning in our city manager's brain over there trying to.
Well, if he goes down and starts writing notes, I can tell.
One of my favorite times.
So last week we had the Budget and Implementation Committee meeting for RCTC, and not a whole lot of exciting stuff to report, except for I was reappointed as the chairman of that committee for the second year. So Beaumont is well represented there, and pretty much the same with the RCTC meeting. There wasn't a whole lot to report, so it's coming up next week. So that's all I have.
Thank you very much, Mayor Pro Tem White. What I have is I attended WRCOG meeting this last Monday. One of the things that Aaron reported out on with Cal Cities was the number of housing bills that are going to be coming forward and that we'll be getting hit with. SB 9, which is a big concern because it would allow the construction of a duplex in areas where they have single family homes as a ministerial action. Also, there's a SB 10, SB 55, which is, I believe it's the prohibition of building in a high fire area, which we abut a number of high fire areas, so that may have an impact. But there'll be a lot of housing bills coming that I'm sure Kyle's going to be keeping an eye out on. As Councilmember Santos referenced, they had Monday was the unveiling of the new transportation logos. Turned out really nice. You know, it's one thing to see it on a board, completely different in person on a new bus. I believe we have 3 new buses that have that logo on there that will be included in our fleet. Also had the opportunity to meet the Banning's transportation manager, Melissa Williams. We look forward to working with her side by side and making sure that we can improve transportation throughout the pass area. So with that, Councilmember Finn, did you have a question? No, okay.
Yes, I did. Yes, I did, Mayor.
Okay.
I'm sorry, it wasn't a question. I did miss an important thing to report on, and that was I attended the city's retail workshop last week.
Oh, yes.
Great job. Now, if I ran a retail business, I mean, I'd be all over it.
Yeah.
But, you know, I'm a real estate agent and I work out of my home. But just wanted to give kudos to Kyle and his staff and so forth to put that together. Very great presentation. As a business owner in Beaumont, I was kind of excited about it. And then to see what the city's doing to help with the equipment loaning and so forth, it looks like that Beaumont's really reaching out to its business owners and so forth. And so kudos to everybody. So thank you.
Councilmember Finn, thank you. I was meant to mention that. I didn't make a note of that. Yes, it was a great job. It was about an hour and a half. What is available through that program is truly amazing. It really offers a lot, and I hope businesses in the city take advantage of that program. I'm hoping Kyle will come back with reports to see how successful that is once we get rolling here. But you're absolutely right, Councilmember Finn. It was great. And do I have anything else from any other council members? With that, we'll go to the economic development update.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I do not have an update for you tonight. We're just getting geared up for next week's EDC meeting on Wednesday at 4 o'clock.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Warsinski. We have a city treasurer report.
Yes, you do. Good evening, City Council and Mayor. Thank you. Two quick things. One, I just wanted to reiterate, I would have told you this at the last meeting, but something came up that when we were having our Finance Audit Committee, the audit was there that day, but we'd only had about 2 days to review about 102 pages. And the committee was pretty firm on wanting to have their eyes on it and have a chance to go over it, as opposed to just raising their hand and saying recommended approval. And I wholeheartedly agreed with that too. That's why it's delayed. Otherwise, you would have had it in January, which was the goal last year when we hired the new firm to do the audit, was to do it in January. They said they could deliver, and they really did. So we've worked that glitch out. Jeff will work on a way to get that report to us a little sooner, so we'll have a little more time and be able to at least get it in January. And I heard December for maybe a shot too this year. Also, we decided most of our discussion was around internal controls, and Jeff suggested that he will give us a report out on how they are doing, the progress on those reports, and I will report out on that at our next meeting. We also, at the audit committee in January, reorganized, and we have a new chair, Tom Lemaster, and a new vice chair, Steve Cooley. That's all I have.
Thank you very much for that report. That brings us to our city clerk report. Mr. Melman.
Mayor and Council. Public Records requests monthly status report for the month of December. Total number of requests 11, number of completed requests 11, staff time allocated 6 hours. You can tell that one of our favorite requesters left town and moved back to Orange County, for which we are all grateful. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Melman. That brings us to our city attorney report. Mr. Peatney.
Yes, just briefly, Your Honor. The matters that are pending against the city, there are 4 items. One of them is Aguirre versus the city of Beaumont, and we believe that case is soon going to be removed from the list of pending matters against the city. We're working on making that happen soon. And then Christian Lee versus the city of Beaumont. That case is still in the early stages of pretrial. Charles Peters versus the city of Beaumont. That's a case where Mr. Peters had sued the city. We prevailed on that case at the trial court level. And so we took it off the list, but then Mr. Peters filed an appeal. And so the only thing that we're working on right now is responding to the appeal. And then we have a relatively recent lawsuit that was filed by the Southwest Regional Council of Carpenters versus the city of Beaumont. This is a CEQA case filed in connection with the approval of the general plan amendment. And so we're working on preparing a defense on that case. There is, as part of the CEQA litigation process, a mandatory early settlement conference. So we'll keep you posted on any developments in that case. And then in addition to the cases that I've just listed that are cases where the city is a defendant, the city also has lawsuits that are pending against third parties. One of those lawsuits is the lawsuit that the city has pending against Urban Logic Consultants. And for the benefit of Mr. Fenn, ULC was owned by 3 individuals who were city officials. They all pled guilty to felonies in connection with their activities in the city of Beaumont. ULC was bought by somebody. That individual then, on behalf of that corporation, filed a lawsuit against the city of Beaumont seeking to collect on allegedly unpaid invoices. So the city had to defend that case. It had no choice. It was being sued by this company that had, that the city alleges in its litigation had damaged the city to the tune of millions of dollars. And that claim by ULC against the city was eliminated. And so there's no longer a claim by ULC against the city. Instead, there's just a claim by the city and also WRCOG, both suing Urban Logic Consultants for damages in connection with their activities while they were consultants to the city of Beaumont. In addition to that, we have a lawsuit pending against the former Bond Disclosure Council of the city. And then there's a lawsuit pending against AIG Insurance, which is the theft and dishonesty insurance provider to the city during the relevant time period that a lot of the activities went on by former city officials that damaged the city. And so that claim is for somewhere between $10 and $15 million, depending on the policy. There's one policy for $10 million and one policy for $15 million. And so that concludes my report on litigation matters.
Thank you very much for that report, Mr. Pinckney. And last but certainly not least, City Manager report by Mr. Todd Parton.
Oh, wow. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that very much. Quite a surprise this evening. So looking at the forecast for the next 10 days, we have very little rain. So there will be some precipitation, but it's very light, really not expected to be measurable. So we're very thankful for that. I will say that the storm events we had last week were quite intense for us as we were kind of walking preparation for that event. And our efforts on the staff side in terms of emergency prep actually began with the El Dorado and Apple fires months back. So we've been working to get organized and get planning for that. I would like to kind of reach out to some key individuals who have been incredible in working through this, particularly our public safety, our police department has worked to create incident command posts and to create regional assets that everybody took advantage of in this last go round. Chief Talese and his team, Mercedes Cashmere and Lieutenant Galetta, have been critical with that. Christine Day and her staff, particularly Jeff Hart, Elizabeth Gibbs. Transit was out there waiting and just ready to serve people as they need to be picked up and brought, whether they were in Beaumont, Cherry Valley. They were working that process. Carrie Mendoza was there monitoring, making sure IT was there. Edgar Tornado was there, making all that go. Jeff Molenkamp set us up, had finances rolling, had everything structured, ready to go. And Ashley Starr helping to keep good information flow going, making sure everybody was aware of what's happening. So your team's been meeting and working nonstop since this point, and we know that we are in a hazard situation for the next several years. So we're on a ready basis as we kind of go. So, I just wanted to call them out. And I'd also be remiss if I really didn't call out as groups, our community services and our streets divisions, and our Parks and Recs folks. They've been out there, they've been on call. Our utility folks, Thaxton, Van Bell, they've been here and they've been ready and on call. So just want to call that out and let you know that they're still here and they're coming back. I appreciate, I was going to kind of mention our kickoff on our WRCOG meeting. So I'm part of a subcommittee that's looking at the feasibility or recommendations to the WRCOG Executive Committee on whether or not we want to do a regional economic development program for WRCOG. So anyway, so we're working on that first meeting. There'll probably be 2 or 3 more subcommittee meetings and a report will be brought together. And so we'll see what that looks like. So providing input on that. The project report, the January update, 2021 project report is in the packet. So we've got a rundown of all of our key projects going on in our various departments and the outstanding development activities that are going on. COVID-19, we're continuing to track and monitor what's going on with cases, trends, hospitalization, ICU rates. So we'll continue to monitor that. As we begin to see our trends, and we're seeing a significant reduction for all of Riverside County, we're kind of coming back down the mountain, hopefully. So we'll continue to watch that. And as we get back down to pre-Thanksgiving levels, my plan is to begin looking at making reopening modifications to operations again. So we kind of get back to similar operations to what we had prior to the Thanksgiving surge that we had. The small business grant application, is launched. It was launched this week, and we do have application deadlines that are due through the 19th. So we'll be getting those applications in. As of today, I think we already had 4 applications in. So hopefully we've got a lot of excitement that will take over that. A very important announcement came out of the US CDC today. You are not supposed to yell or cheer at the Super Bowl this year. So at your parties, you're supposed to get noisemakers and do that. So I do have a handy noisemaker app on my phone. I'm planning to use that for the Super Bowl. And I really am in tune with environmental issues a lot. And so I read up on endangered species. And Mr. Martinez, would you believe I was just reading about the Aurora chub today, this very day? And it's funny because I don't know how they know it's endangered. They just found it. They just found the chub. As a matter of fact, it was found right after the stay-at-home order was issued, and they weigh about 10 pounds apiece on average. So the chub is here. Maybe it will go away. So, Mayor, that does conclude my report.
Well, thank you for that detailed report, Mr. Parton. I see that Mayor Pro Tem White has his hand raised for a comment.
Todd, you mentioned a kickoff meeting with WRCOG for a project, but I couldn't really hear what the name of the project was, or can you?
Yes, so WRCOG, for their strategic thinking for this year, identified 3 primary objectives. And one of those objectives was to determine whether or not WRCOG should move forward with a regionalized economic development program. And so they're looking at, whether it's a sub-region organized economic development strategic plan. It could be a JPA. There's a plethora of options that have been floated out there as concepts for what this could be. One of the things I've discussed is this could be a WRCOG sponsored thing. This could be a completely separate entity. It could be another agency. As they're heading into this, what's been described to us as subcommittee members is that there's no preconceived notion of whose it would be or anything like that. So we're at the very beginning stages, and they're in the process of, I think, collecting questions and working in that direction. So.
Thank you. One of the problems I have with a JPA that is so focused on a specific issue, such as WRCOG and TUMP fees and Measure A, is that they are constantly looking for ways to expand into other areas and grow. And so I get worried every time I hear about WRCOG wanting to go into a new area of government and just expand it. So you piqued my interest, and I just didn't hear what the project was. So thank you for the explanation. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Thank you very much. And Todd, thanks for bringing up the response on the rain event. Being in some of those meetings, council should know that this city team was extremely prepared. With transit expanding their hours where they would answer the phone. Typically it's a 9 to 5. They stayed on all night just in case anybody was evacuated in the middle of the night. They'd have a place to call and get transferred, because the location for the what's the word I'm looking for? The Hammerling School in Banning. That was the location for the evacuation center. So they'd had to travel. So the city team was very impressive, very proud of that team. And so thank you for bringing that up and mentioning that. So with that, we have future agenda items. We have Mayor Pro Tem White.
Yes, I've gotten, and I'm sure the rest of the council have, 2 questions regarding our contract with Waste Management and their decision to stop service for the greens, I think. And I had a couple of citizens reach out to me and said that they had contacted Waste Management and were looking for some kind of discounted rate for the fact that they were getting less services than they were contracted for. And the response was that if you look at your bill, you're really only being charged for the brown garbage cans or cans. And I just think it would be nice to get a report of what the progress is with Waste Management. With spring coming up, a lot of people are concerned that we won't have what we're paying for. So just a report at the beginning of the next meeting or in the manager's report that sort of updates us so that it will update the citizens of what Waste Management progress is towards getting back to full service.
Councilmember White, they resumed full service this week. Messages went out via text, email, whichever way that the customer signed up for their respective notification. But we met with Waste Management at the end of last week. We only granted them that 1 month ability to do it through the holiday due to COVID. But they are back on schedule, full collection starting this week.
Okay, never mind.
And Mayor Pro Tem White, I did meet with Waste Management as soon as they indicated that they were reducing the service, which is why they in turn, I think, sent the letter out to make sure that the notifications were properly done. One of I think the key things that came out of that meeting too, and they included that in the letter, is the contact information that you have on your account. You need to make sure that you have the phone number so that they can get a hold of you and send out via text, and make sure your email is updated. And they're using those two electronic medias to make sure that customers are notified in advance.
So obviously I need to update my information because I didn't get the follow-up email or text regarding the resumption of service. So thank you.
You're very welcome, sir. We have any other requests for future agenda items? Seeing none, I will go ahead and adjourn this meeting at 8 o'clock.
Good job.
I do want to thank my fellow council members for your support and your patience with this Zoom call. I appreciate that very much. And thanks for not leaving me hanging out there too long. Gentlemen and ladies, have a good evening. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everybody.
Thank you all.
See you later. Thank you.
Thank you.